Hello, everybody. We're live. I'm so happy to be back. This time, talking about eclipse season. And I hope you're all excited. In about 2 weeks, we're going to have the first eclipse of 2024. And soon after that, we're going to have the second eclipse. And then afterwards, we don't get into the second eclipse season until later in the year, in the fall. But still, there are some exciting developments. Maybe you've already started seeing some things in your life. But today we'll chat about what you can expect. What do eclipses even mean? And then, of course, we'll go through each of the rising signs as well. So you can take a look more specifically what themes might be coming up for you personally. All right, let me just pull up my notes. And I hope the sound is better this time because I'm trying out a different browser. I didn't realize that with the Pluto and Aquarius stream, my sound was quite bad. So apologies about that. So I hope this one is better. All right, so let's start off the live by talking about, like what is an eclipse? Why do we have them? I think that's a good place to start, just so that we're all on the same page. So, an eclipse is essentially a full moon or a new moon. But the thing that makes an eclipse quite different from any regular full moon and new moon is that the sun and the moon align not just in the same part of the sky, which is what a regular new moon, for example, would be, but this time they also align at the same. You could sort of say at the same level. So sometimes they could be in the same part of the sky, but they're, a little bit like this. But during an eclipse, they're really at the same level. And as a result, depending on where the Earth is, it's either over here or in the middle between the sun and the moon. It causes some cool things to happen with the light that we get. So that is basically what an eclipse is. And if you're looking at an astrology chart, maybe you've pulled up like a birth chart online, where you can see that an eclipse is going to happen is if you take a look at the south and the north nodes. So that's the part of the sky or those are the points in the chart that are going to show you that when the sun and the moon align close to those points, that is going to be an eclipse. The closer they are to the nodes, the more totality we're going to have, the more that the light is going to be covered, the more they're going to be aligned really at the same spot in the sky. And if we're farther away from the north and the south nodes, then we get a bit of an alignment. Sometimes it's those eclipses where you see the moon just pass over the edge of the sun, but you don't get that total eclipsing, for example. So if the eclipses are just a full moon or a new moon, there are basically two main planets that we're talking about when we're talking about eclipses. And we have to make sure that we get the symbolism of those two planets just, back into in our minds, bring it up fresh again so that we're able to really understand the themes with the eclipses as well. So the two main planets that are part of an eclipse are the sun and the moon. So let's chat a little bit about the symbolism with each of them. And let's start with the sun. So the sun represents our outer reality and our ego. A lot of the times it's about how we show up in the world and the personality almost that drives us forward. The sun can also represent our head. It's often the more logical part of the way we experience reality. And it can also just represent sanity, just waking up, engaging in the world, and feeling like a sane and complete person. The moon, on the other hand, represents more of our inward reality. So you can already start to see where the symbolism's a bit different. The sun is our outward reality. We might have a sun in Leo, so we might come across as quite warm, quite open, quite perhaps extravagant. But if our inner reality, if our moon is in a sign maybe more like Pisces or like Cancer, our inward reality will be quite different. Our inward reality will be a little bit more withdrawn and a little bit more focused on, the aspects that Pisces and Cancer are focused with. The moon also represents our feelings, all of the things that are going on within us, the feelings that get brought up in us when we experience and live life. And as a result, the moon also symbolizes the heart, whereas the sun symbolizes more of the logical way we show up in the world. The moon symbolizes more of the emotional way we show up in the world. If we're really somebody that lives by the moon, for example, it probably means that we make a lot of our decisions based on our feelings. We might look at a situation and logically we think, oh, I should really go this way. But our heart might not be with that decision. Our heart might be with the other decision. So if we're somebody that lives really from this place of the moon or in line with the moon, then a lot of the times we often act more in accordance with what our emotions are telling us. So I hope sort of breaking down, really going to the root of, okay, what do the sun and the moon represent is going to also help you with understanding eclipses a little bit better. And so one of the things that you can think about in terms of eclipses is that, if we have a solar eclipse, which is basically a new moon. It means the sun and the moon are in the same part of the sky. You can imagine that our logical mind, our outward reality, is usually on par with our inner reality or our emotions, our feelings. And that's why you usually hear people say that the new moon is a good time for manifesting, because usually it feels a bit more aligned and a bit more like it's working together. When we have lunar eclipse, the sun and the moon are on opposite parts of the sky. And there you can already see from the symbolism we talked about that a full moon can cause friction. And this is why we have our outer reality, our logical mind focused all the way over here. And then we have our emotions or our inner reality focused completely on the opposite end. And that's why you hear a lot of the times that full moons can have really weird effects on others, that, truths may come up. We may start realizing things. And you also hear, there's a lot of accidents on full moons, or perhaps also people in hospitals tend to act a little bit more strange during a full moon as well. So you can imagine why. There's a little bit more friction between inner and outer reality. So I hope that helps us going forward, considering these two eclipses. There's one more thing that I think it's important we talk about with these eclipses, and that is, okay, like what sign are these eclipses happening in? About every 1.5 years, we change the signs of the eclipses. So we all get an even playing field. And these first two eclipses of 2024 are happening in Libra and Aries. So they're happening on the axis of Libra and Aries. And as an evolutionary astrologer, the way I approach eclipses, especially, is by taking a look at the South Node as the point that we need to move away from, and the North Node as the point that we need to move more towards. So automatically during these eclipses, we have the South Node in Libra and the North Node in Aries. So all of the horoscopes that are coming, and in general my view on these upcoming eclipses, is that we're all being asked to step a little bit away from that Libra way of being and step a little bit more into that Aries way of being. And that doesn't mean that one is better than the other, of course. In a couple of years, we'll have the opposite. We'll be asked to step um, away from Aries and more towards Libra. So it's not a good or a bad. I think one of the things that we should keep in mind with these upcoming eclipses is that there can definitely be, each of the signs can definitely be taken out of context and can be taken to the extreme. Usually we think of the sign of Libra as a beautiful sign. I mean, it's Venus ruled after all. It's a sign that is focused on relationships. It's a sign that's focused on connecting with others, also on an intellectual level as well. So sometimes you might think like, oh, like there's nothing horrible about that. That's a beautiful way to be and experience this world. However, because we're talking about the South Node being in the sign of Libra, we have to shift our analysis of these eclipses to take a look at where we're overdoing the Libran way of being. So, for all of us, and we'll get into each of the rising signs for specific themes, but for all of us, we need to take a look at where are we focused too much on relationships? Where are we focused too much on others? Where have we compromised too much for maybe our relationships, for our home situation, compromised too much for our work, and have forgotten to care for ourselves? Or have perhaps focused too much on thinking, trying to be strategic, trying to choose the best decision that will fit everybody and will not upset anybody. And as a result, we have not been able to take any action. We have been stuck in this sort of area, this limbo area, where we are just constantly considering the opinions of everybody else. And because we realize we can't please everybody else, we might be holding ourselves back from choosing one of them, going down the road of one of them. And because the North Node is in the sign of Aries, we're asked to step more into the energies of Aries with this eclipse season. So we are asked to stand up for ourselves. We are asked to be courageous. If there is anything in our life where we are being cowered around, or we're being scared to act towards, we're scared to initiate, because Aries is the sign of initiating, then this eclipse is going to show that to us. And I can really see this as all of us trying to develop this ability to stand up and claim what we believe, claim what we stand for. it's a time to pick something, like are we I don't even know, are we a plant lover or are we not, are we a cat person or are we a dog person? Those are just some silly examples, but you can take it quite seriously, of course. But I think this eclipse season for a lot of us will, in one way or another, ask us to just choose one, stop sitting on the fence, take a position, and really stand proud in it, and don't be afraid to claim that position, knowing that it might not please everybody. Aries is also the sign that actually can act quite instinctively. So during this eclipse season, I would also encourage you that if there's an instinct you have, if there's this feeling, this Martian feeling boiling up inside you of, I just need to do something, I need to make a decision, I need to show up, I need to say something, then I would definitely encourage you to that, during eclipse season is the perfect time to do that. So now that we've understood, Libra and Aries and this axis in general for the eclipse seasons, or for this eclipse season, I do want us to keep in mind that some of us may experience eclipses quite strongly, and some of us not. Some of us might experience certain eclipses very strongly, and the rest not. I do think that eclipses are usually seen on a more societal level. They are sometimes referred to as fated events because sometimes they can really bring events to us that, in a way, force us to move our soul in a sort of evolutionary way. And if we are not acting in our life, in our day to day, and showing up honestly and keeping things in balance, if we are stepping too much into that Libran way of being, over compromising, overthinking, never taking actions or taking a stand for something, then the eclipses might especially be felt quite strongly on a personal level as well. Another thing that could signal that the eclipses might be significant for you is if you have any personal planets or any of your angles. So, ascendant, IC, descendant, and midheaven. If you have any of those in the signs of Libra, Aries, or also Cancer and Capricorn, then it's going to be possibly felt quite strongly for you as well. All right, so now that we've sort of given that disclaimer, let's get into what are the two eclipses. Let's talk about each of them one by one. The first eclipse that we have this season is a lunar eclipse, which means it's a full moon. So we have the sun at 5 degrees of Aries and the moon at 5 degrees of Libra. The way this could manifest with this lunar eclipse is that things are coming to a head or to a peak. Think of the full moon as sort of an escalation or the peak of the cycle. We talked about this friction of the sun and the moon facing each other off. So it could be that up to the 25th, things are slowly building up, and perhaps on the 25th or around the 25th, that's when we're really seeing the peak of it. One thing to keep in mind is that this is, it won't be as significant lunar eclipse. We won't be seeing anything quite spectacular in the sky. The moon is just going to pass through the edges of the earth, of the sun. So it's not going to be a full eclipsing, by the way. So keep that also in mind. But if we're looking at the symbolism of this lunar eclipse, One of the beautiful things that I see about this lunar eclipse is that we have quite a lot of Pisces energy. And especially the fact that Venus will be in Pisces during this lunar eclipse, whereas in the later eclipse in April, Venus will be in Aries. So that's also quite a big difference between these two eclipses. The eclipse on March 25th, and the fact that we have all of these Pisces influences, I do see this as us taking the necessary steps in order to make meaningful soul connections with others, to stand up for ourselves and to act instinctively with the end goal that is actually going to bring us together with others. It's going to allow us to show our true self to others, to really be vulnerable with how we feel, which requires a lot of courage. Saying what we were really thinking, being honest, those are all symbolisms of Aries. But it's with the end goal of really becoming one with others and connecting in a meaningful way. So that's a beautiful aspect about this lunar eclipse, I think, and something that should be celebrated at least. One of the other exciting things about this specific lunar eclipse on March 25th is that Mercury is not too far away. So it could be a lunar eclipse that involves a lot of talking, that involves a lot of communicating. And I think this also really fits the Aries archetype, because Aries needs to take action, needs to show up in some way. So it's possible that in this lunar or during this lunar eclipse on March 25th, your actions are a little bit more focused around speaking up or taking the stand verbally, and perhaps not as much around literally taking physical actions or doing any physical changes, for example. And the sun is going to be in the part of Aries which is ruled by Mars. So we definitely are going to have a lot of passion and a lot of energy. So it's also not a bad idea if you have a lot of that and you also don't want to overreact with the things happening in your life. You can always also direct it towards physical activity, for example, making sure that you move your body, you go on walks, you go to the gym, whatever it is that's part of your fitness routine. So overall, yeah, I think it's a nice lunar eclipse. It's a lunar eclipse that I like because of all of that Pisces energy there. So let's get into the solar eclipse, which will be happening on the 8th of April. So the solar eclipse on 8th of April is a new moon, which means that the sun and the moon will be at the same part of the sky. And this one is actually going to be more spectacular. They are a bit more aligned with each other than the March eclipse. The sun and the moon are both going to be at 19 degrees of Aries. And this part of Aries is ruled by the sun, not by Mars. So already we start to see a different type of energy for this April eclipse than we did for the March eclipse. Because we have less Pisces energy, and because we are in the part of Aries that's ruled by the sun, I do feel like this solar eclipse will be a little bit more ego ruled. It will be a little bit more inspired by the ego. Perhaps we are taking actions not anymore with the end goal of connecting with others, but with the end goal of ourselves, with the end goal of protecting ourselves, with the end goal of making ourselves more seen than others, or as a way to compete with others, for example. Oh, and there's a weird thumbs up showing up. Sorry about that. So there is already that different energy there. All right, I turned off the thumbs up reactions, so they shouldn't be happening again. One of the other interesting things about this April 8th solar eclipse is that Mercury will be retrograde. So already we see such a different energy from the eclipse in March, where Mercury was direct, Mercury was quite close by. So we were already seeing this talking energy, communicating energy. The solar eclipse in April with Mercury retrograde, it might mean that maybe we're saying things, but they're misunderstood or they're misinterpreted. They come across in a weird way. Um, we think we said something and we're like, okay, I did it, but actually the message didn't come across. So we already see, I think, more of a disruptive energy with the solar eclipse in April, driven by ego, and Mercury is retrograde. So already I get a bit of a different feeling for this one than for the one in March. Another thing that's unique about the solar eclipse is that Venus will be in Aries. In the March eclipse, we had Venus in Pisces. And in the April eclipse, we'll have Venus in Aries. When we have Venus in Aries, we might see that there's also more anger building up internally. Um, it could be something that's affecting you quite a bit personally, and there could be a possibility that you can sort of overreact or explode in a more easier way, or in a more triggered way, in a way that your reaction is so over the top and not in line at all with what the actual situation is, for example. So overall, I personally really love the March eclipse and not so much the April one. But I'm confident that we all got this. Just keep in mind to take those Aries actions, to stand up for yourself, to take action, to speak up, to take initiative, to not be afraid to lead, to not be afraid that if you say something or do something, people are not going to like it. Some people are not going to like it, and that is okay. All right, it's time, about 28 minutes in, it's time to finally get to the rising sign horoscopes. I hope you're all excited. Besides the rising sign, I want you to also go ahead and pay attention to the house that Venus was in your natal chart. The house Venus was in when you were born. Venus rules Libra, which is where the south node is. We already talked about that earlier. So, by looking at where Venus was in at the moment of your birth or in your natal chart, you actually also get an understanding of your personal Venusian approach to life, where in your life you're especially acting in this Venusian way. Um, so what I mean by this, let's do an example. Perhaps the eclipses will be happening in your 10th house. So when we go through the rising signs, go ahead and listen to the appropriate one, and you'll find out that, okay, something is going to be happening around your career. However, Let's say you also have Venus in your second house. Venus was in your second house at the moment you were born. This adds an extra layer to our interpretation of these eclipses. So I want you to also go ahead and watch the horoscope that corresponds with Venus in the second house, because there you're going to learn that you are approaching money, resources, your self-confidence with that Venusian approach as well. You are probably compromising in some way when it comes to money, when it comes to your self confidence. Perhaps you put others ahead of you, and that has an effect on how confident you feel. Perhaps you don't want to stir the peace, so you often settle for jobs that pay less. Just some examples. So, knowing that Venus is situated in the second house, knowing that this eclipse is going to happen in your 10th, already you get a little bit more nuance, a little bit more specificity in your interpretation for this eclipse season. You know that probably there's going to be something happening in your career that's bringing up your self confidence, your finances, perhaps as well. So please, if you can, watch your rising sign and then also watch the house that Venus was in when you were born. When I go through each of them, I'll state both the rising as well as the house of Venus as well. All right, we're gonna start with Aries rising. Aries, are you sick of always being the first ones, or are you in love with that? I feel like you'd be one of the signs that would love that. So we have Aries rising, or we have Venus in your seventh house. So if Venus was in the seventh house in your natal chart or when you were born, then you also want to make sure that you watch this horoscope as well. So, Aries rising. During this eclipse season, you are going to be asked to find the balance between compromising for the sake of your relationships versus actually being a true leader, actually being your own individual, being somebody that's separate from the other person, defining yourself as your own human being. Because the first eclipse, the one in March, has quite a lot of Pisces focus, which for you is a 12th house focus, it could happen that the first eclipse is something that's playing out a little bit more in your mind, that you're really thinking about these themes, or perhaps that it's really affecting your thoughts and the way you see and perceive the world. Whereas the second eclipse in April might result in actual action or actual steps that you're taking, for example. And for you, it's especially significant if you are an Aries rising, then it could be that one of these two eclipses falls exactly on your ascendant. So take a look at what degrees your ascendant is at. If it's at 5 degrees of Aries or 19 degrees of Aries, then this will be especially significant eclipse season for you. All right, let's move on to Taurus rising or Venus in your sixth house. So, if you are a Taurus rising, this eclipse season is asking you to find the balance between making your everyday life beautiful and actually dealing with the real and sometimes unpleasant feelings you have. And this can manifest in many ways. Perhaps you're so focused on having a clean kitchen or making sure that you have the best health regime, you sleep 8 hours a day. But actually, what you should be focusing on more is putting together a routine where you can really take care of your mind and your mental health as well. Because obviously, health is not just about our body, but also about our mind as well. And specifically, Taurus, it's this eclipse season is about recognizing that sometimes you have strong feelings, sometimes you're angry, sometimes you don't agree with things, and not being ashamed to say, yes, I have them, admitting that those are a part of you and accepting them as well. During the first eclipse, because we have a lot of Pisces focus for you, this is an 11th house focus. So, with the first eclipse at the end of March, it might be things from your friends or things from like the community groups that you're part of that trigger this theme or that help you realize something about this theme. So that's already one clue that you can think of if you need some help with figuring out, okay, what are these eclipses trying to teach me? Next up, we have Gemini rising, or if you have Venus in the fifth house in your natal chart, then this is also applicable for you. First, I'm going to take a drink of water. And I also wanted to post with you that I just updated my readings, the availability for my readings in April, and I'll drop the link right here. So if you're enjoying this forecast, but if you feel like, hey, I actually want some more support, I I would love to have a reading with Emilia just to sort of help me understand my chart or help me with the year ahead. Then you can go ahead and book a reading using that link. But let's get into Gemini rising, or those that have Venus in their fifth house in their natal chart. So, Gemini rising, you are being asked to find the balance between living in the present moment, enjoying the present moment, playing, having fun, and actually looking towards the future, actually standing up for something meaningful that's going to have a long term impact on your life and on other people's lives as well. This could look like many ways. It could manifest as you being asked to look ahead of just immediate gratification. You might really be asked to give up having some fun today, give up some pleasures today, so that both you and those around you can have a better future tomorrow. And that can be as little or as small as it needs to be. And because this eclipse is happening in your 11th house, and specifically the North Node is in Aries in your 11th house, I think what could be amazing for you, Gemini rising, is to join groups that you really care about. Join a community group that you're a little bit scared to join, but that really aligns with your beliefs and the things you want to stand for. And just by joining this group, you are already taking this courageous Aries act. You're taking the first step. You are showing to the rest of the world that this is what you believe in. So I think that could be a wonderful sort of resolution to make for yourself during this eclipse season. During the first eclipse with the Pisces focus, you're going to have a lot of energy in your 10th house. So it's possible that some of these themes are coming up from your workspace as well. Let's move on to Cancer rising or Venus in the fourth house. I feel like we're just like flying through these rising signs, which is amazing. So, Cancer rising or Venus in your fourth house in your natal chart. Um, check where your angles are. Check at what degrees you have your IC and MC, and especially if you have them at the 5 or 19 degrees, then these eclipses will be quite significant for you personally. This eclipse season, Cancer rising, is asking you to be selfish and oriented more towards the contribution that you are bringing to the rest of the world. It's asking you to take a look at if you are maybe a little bit too focused on your internal world, if you're too focused on maybe your home, maybe your family, and all of that energy and attention that you're directing there is actually coming at a cost of you pursuing your own ambitions, pursuing all of the great ideas that you have about all the great ideas that you have that can also really cement your own place in society and how others view you and the contribution you bring to society as well. Next up, we have Leo rising or Venus in the third house. So, Leo rising, or those that have Venus in the third house in your natal chart, you are being asked to find a balance between communicating with diplomacy and respect versus making your place in the world by being aggressive or being direct. Um, Aggressive is a bit of a strong word there. Being direct, being straightforward, taking a stand, having opinions. And specifically, what's interesting, Leo rising, is it's almost like during this eclipse season, you need to take a stand, you need to speak up in a very direct way, sometimes tell people you don't agree. And as a result, you are more recognized, you are more respected, and you're actually seen as a leader by those around you. It could even be about you accepting competitiveness, not trying to think that you're equal or talking to others even as if you're equal, but really not being afraid to show your authority when you speak with others. And again, as a result, you might find that recognition starts coming your way. And if you're not stepping towards that, if you really keep playing out the Libran way of being, that then you might find that it's really difficult for you to get recognition that you deserve. And one of the other things that I noted that is actually kind of interesting for me, especially being a Leo rising, is not to be afraid to sort of promote yourself without any shame. To really say, like, yeah, I did this, I made this decision, and it had this effect. I really see that being the Aries in the ninth house playing out for you, Leo rising. One other note I wanted to bring with Leo rising, especially as a Leo rising myself, is that it could be something related to foreign lands or also something related to long travel. During this eclipse season, maybe you're doing some travels. Um, And you could be asked to be courageous in that area for your life and to ask for what you want. And I just wanted to share a personal example here of the way this has already started manifesting for me in my life as a Leo rising. I just heard actually that I will be getting a residency permit for the Netherlands on my own. Up until this point, I don't know how much you know, but I've lived in the Netherlands for over 5 years. And each time I've had a very specific sponsor. Um, and I have been very reliant on each sponsor in order to stay in the country, be able to live here. And literally just this week, in anticipation for these eclipses, I received the notice that I no longer need a sponsor and that I have a residency permit that is, in a way, just on my own merit. And to me, that's a perfect representation of this ninth house eclipse manifesting for me as a Leo rising. The ninth house is about foreign lands, and the Netherlands is a foreign land. Aries is about the sign of being courageous, asking for things. I had to be courageous and fill out the application. I didn't have to do it. Nobody was forcing me. It wasn't required. It didn't come on its own. I really had to take the action, pay a lot of money with the risk that they might still reject the application, be courageous in that way. And really act in this sort of Aries way of I am my own individual, stepping away from the Libran way of being where I rely on others, and very specifically for me, where I rely on others for my residency in the Netherlands. So I hope that example was perhaps something interesting for you, and Leo rising maybe gives you some idea of the ways that this eclipse season could manifest for you. Next up, we have Virgo rising. Or if you have Venus in your second house, then this horoscope is also for you. So, Virgo rising, during this eclipse season, you are being asked to show your true self and be courageous, especially when it comes to being vulnerable with others. Aries is in your eighth house. So the eighth house is this place where we ask for help. We admit that we're not always able to take care of ourselves, that we need help from others, whether financially, whether emotionally. And I think this eclipse season for you, Virgo rising, will especially be asking you to admit that and to be open and courageous on all sorts of topics where you relying on others is the theme, like debt. You are relying on institutions to give you money. Death could be also another theme that might play out for Virgo rising, not meaning that anybody's going to die, but more that you need to be courageous around those topics, perhaps talking with others more openly about them. Another theme that could come up are taxes. Perhaps again, you're more open or sharing more easily with others, being courageous, having those difficult conversations around taxes. And I can even imagine that, the eighth house represents taboo topics, and having Aries, an Aries eclipse in your eighth house, it's almost as if you're being asked to take a stand when it comes to these taboo topics and be open about it. You're being asked to share openly with others what you think about some of these taboo parts of life that we keep hush hush, that we don't talk about. So that should be quite exciting. I feel like those will be some interesting conversations for sure. All right, next up we have Libra rising, or if you're somebody that has Venus in your first house, then this is also a horoscope that will be of importance to you. And this is if you have Venus in your first house in your natal chart. So, Libra rising, this could be a very significant eclipse for you. Check whether your ascendant or your descendant is at 9 degrees or 15 degrees of Aries and Libra, because then it means that probably these eclipses are going to be quite significant. You might feel them a bit more than others. So, Libra rising, you will be asked to be more independent in your relationships. It's almost as if this eclipse season is trying to teach you that you can actually have a stronger partnership by realizing that you're your own person, by taking time away from others, physically, emotionally, mentally. And also realizing that sometimes deeper relationships are made when we're honest and when we're vulnerable, when we're real, and not only when we keep everything nice and pleasant and loving. I get reminded of, I'm not sure where I heard it, but it's this idea that a lot of the times what creates this really exciting passion within relationships is when you take a moment to remove yourself from the relationship, to be your own person, to go live your own life, to gather interesting stories or interesting interactions throughout the day, throughout the week. Because then when you return to that person, um, there's this spark, there's this unknown, there's this opportunity to share, there's this excitement about, guess what I experienced and what I lived this week. So it can definitely, being your own individual can definitely help add that passion back into a relationship. For those that are Libra rising and then that are not in a relationship, it could also mean that you're more vocal and courageous about, or in your business partnerships, perhaps, or even when you are dating with somebody as well. Um, so it could manifest in those areas of your life too. Or even, it could also, the seventh house can also represent soulmates on a friendship level, people that are so close to us that we really, um, we're just as vulnerable and honest with them as we usually are with a partner, for example. All right, hope everybody's hanging on there. We are at Scorpio rising, or for those of you that have Venus in the 12th house in your natal chart, then this horoscope is also applicable for you. So, Scorpio rising, this eclipse season is asking you to ground yourself in your body and in your routine. And it's asking you to make it uniquely yours and not something that you do with others, and also to be courageous with it, um, to add something to it that perhaps others might think is strange or weird or others might not like, but it's something that you do for yourself that really helps you. And Specifically, this could be regarding your health as well. It could be starting a new health regime. I could even imagine this as, as somebody deciding to start going to an acupuncturist. It's very much this Aries idea of, I am taking a stand, I'm being courageous, even though others around me might judge me for going to an Eastern medicine doctor that's not really scientifically proven. But still, there's that Aries part of you that you're courageous, that you're not afraid to take a stand for something you believe in. Next up, we have Sagittarius rising. And this horoscope is also relevant for those that have Venus in their eighth house in their natal chart. The Sagittarius rising, this eclipse season, is asking you to get in touch with your inner child again. I think this is like, your horoscope is my favorite. It's asking you to seek everyday pleasures. It's asking you to play. It's asking you to feel good. Um, and especially, you're being asked to act instinctively in that area. So, if around this eclipse season, at any point, you get this random idea or this random instinct of, oh, I should sign up for pottery class, then go for it. Please do. That's the Aries instinctualness. I would really recommend that you follow it during this eclipse season, no matter how random the instinct feels. And one of the interesting things, Sagittarius rising, when I think of Aries in the fifth house, we almost see this theme of being courageous to be a child again, to express your inner child. I think a lot of us, as we grow up, as we become adults, as we go into these super serious jobs, we often don't allow ourselves moments to play, to be silly. Like, how often do adults tickle each other? Like, never. How often do adults, walk to the grocery store and they just feel happy and they start to skip? We never do that. And getting in touch with this part of ourselves and doing that requires a lot of courage, because it's not something that's easily expressed in society. So, you skipping down to the grocery store could definitely be seen as something strange by others around you. So there's definitely this element of being courageous to get in touch with your inner child again. Being courageous, we live in a society where working is really encouraged. Being courageous to say, I don't feel like working, and then you don't work for that day, if you have that luxury. And you have to be quite courageous for that, because I think a lot of people in today's society would start to label you, would think you're weird, would think like, okay, wow, like that's so irresponsible. But it's really getting in touch with that inner child. When we were children, we just went, yeah, I don't want to do that. I don't want to play with cars today. I want to color. I don't want to go whatever, do this. I want to do that. And acting more instinctually in that way, according to what we want. So that's super fun. If you're Sagittarius rising, let me know in the comments if this eclipse season is maybe, if there's maybe something interesting from this fifth house activation for you during this eclipse season. Wow. Okay, we're almost at an hour. And next up, we're going to do Capricorn rising, or those of you that have Venus in your 10th house in your natal chart. So, Capricorn risings, you are being asked to stop overthinking your career. Stop trying to be strategic. Stop trying to care about everybody's opinion, care about everybody's opinion of you, and instead direct your focus on um, your inner needs, being selfish. Stop thinking about, do others have a good image of you? And think about, do I have a good image of myself? Start taking care of your mental or emotional health, maybe even your family or your literal home. But it's really an overall just withdrawing a little bit from all of that outward focus and trying to see if you can bring the balance again, so that you're also spending just as much time, if not even more, if that's needed, on the things that others don't see, your family connections, your home, your inner happiness as well. This is a really interesting note I wrote when I was preparing for Capricorn rising. I wrote, be the leader you need to be for yourself. Be the leader you need yourself to be, rather than the leader that others need you to be. Aries in the fourth house is like, okay, I am my own leader. I show up for myself, for my family, for the things behind closed doors that others don't see. And I am courageous there. I take actions there. I have a lot of passion and energy there as well. We have two more to go. Hope you're not getting too tired. Next up, we have Aquarius rising or Venus in the ninth house in your natal chart. And I'll just go ahead and post again, in case you missed it, the link to book a reading with me. So if any of this is resonating with you, if you think, hey, I would love to have a chat, to look at my chart, to take a look at maybe even what's upcoming for the next year, then you can go ahead and book a slot there. I believe I have just one slot left for March, and then the rest are in April. So yeah, I look forward to meeting you as well. So now let's get into Aquarius rising or Venus in your ninth house in your natal chart. So, Aquarius rising, you're being asked to stop overthinking recognition and instead focus on communicating freely. Stop overthinking all of the communication you're doing, trying to strategize and say things in a way that will ensure that you contribute something to the world, will ensure that you are recognized for your contribution. And instead, just focus on being a leader. Focus on being direct. Focus on being courageous to say things that you originally might not have said, because you were more afraid about um, the recognition that you might receive from others. That if you take a stand, people won't recognize you as somebody that's the top leader in that discipline, for example, or as somebody that's experienced at work, maybe. Because we're talking about the ninth house here, and the ninth house can also represent foreign travel, or like foreign lands, for example, or long distance travel. It could also be that during this eclipse season, you're being asked to focus more on the local level. Focus on being the leader you need to be. I don't want to say on a small scale, but being the leader you need to be in your neighborhood, with your siblings, with on the street that you live on, at your school, in your city. And stop overthinking about this sort of grand vision of the contribution that you're bringing to the whole world, about all of the things that you want to change and improve about the whole world. or about the country, maybe even. It's one of the beautiful things about Aquarius risings, that they can be quite focused on improving the world and on making a difference, um, and contributing really unique ideas to the rest of the world. But you might find that this eclipse season is asking, hey, let's start on a local level and let's focus on being a leader rather than being concerned with, will others recognize me for my efforts, for the things that I'm doing? Wow, we almost made it. We have one more to go, and that is Pisces rising. Or for those of you that have Venus in your eighth house in your natal chart, then this horoscope will also be applicable to you as well. So, Pisces rising, during this eclipse season, you're asked to take care of yourself financially. I feel like your horoscope is my second favorite out of all of them. And specifically because we have Aries in your second house, you're asked to be proactive when it comes to taking care of yourself financially. You're asked to be proactive and take action when it comes to your self confidence, showing up for yourself. It might be during this eclipse season that you need to be courageous and start doing things that you know will give you a boost of self confidence. Do things that will ensure that you're better off financially, things that will ensure that you can take care of yourself on your own without relying on others. If you get any instincts, any random ideas popping out of nowhere during eclipse season about your financial situation, it might be a good idea to follow them, especially because the Aries archetype is all about moving from our instinct. That's it. That's all the notes I prepared for today. We made it. So we made it through all of the zodiac signs and within an hour. So that's also impressive. Overall, I hope you enjoy eclipse season. I hope you are also able to find your own balance between keeping in the back of your mind all of the themes we talked about today, but also realizing that you have the power and the ability to show up every day and the choice to act and respond to things in a certain way as well. And I hope that this forecast helped give you some awareness, but also helped you feel empowered and prepared for what's to come. And I would encourage you during eclipse season and also afterwards to take time to reflect. It could be using different ways, meditation, journaling, whatever works for you. But just to be able to reflect on what's coming up and how you're showing up. And if you next time would like to do something differently, would like to approach the situation differently. I am so happy that you could join me today, and I hope you enjoyed this live. And if you're watching this during eclipse, during either of the eclipses or just after, then don't be afraid to let me know in the comments how this eclipse season was for you. And I wanted to let you know that I also have full March horoscopes up on my channel as well. So if you want to watch a detailed breakdown of March for your rising sign, then just go to my channel, click on my name, and yeah, you can you can find them there and feel a little bit more at rest, at peace. about what's the plan for March. Okay, amazing. I was so happy to be able to do this for you. I hope it helped you out. Enjoy eclipse season, and yeah, I hope we'll see each other again soon. Bye, everybody.